The massive doors of the Galactic Council chambers opened with a sound that echoed through the vast hall like thunder. Jake Morrison walked through those doors knowing this might be the last time any human would ever set foot in this place. His black suit was pressed and clean, his gray hair combed back neat, and his face showed no fear even though 847 different alien species were about to decide the fate of all humanity. The chamber was huge beyond imagination. Floating platforms held delegates from across the galaxy, each one designed for the specific needs of its occupant. The fish-like aquilons sat in tanks of blue water that glowed softly. The rock creatures called Zilithians stood on platforms of pure crystal. The insect-like Cardans buzzed and clicked in their climate-controlled boxes. And at the center of it all sat Chancellor Vexstar, his body made of living crystal that split light into rainbow patterns across the chamber walls. Jake took his place at the defendant's podium. The word defendant felt wrong to him. Humans had not committed crimes. They had simply been too good at things that made other species uncomfortable. They traded better than the Zilithians. They fought better than the Corridans. They explored faster than anyone else. They asked questions that other species did not want to hear. The charges against the species known as humans are serious, Chancellor Vexstar announced. His voice rang through the chamber in hundreds of different languages at once, translated by machines that turned his crystal singing into words every species could understand. Excessive aggression in trade negotiations. Rapid expansion into territories claimed by member species. Violation of 17 separate peace accords. Development of weapons technology beyond approved limits. Cultural contamination of peaceful civilizations. Jake listened to each charge. Some were true. Some were lies. Some were true but twisted to sound worse than they really were. The peace accords humans had violated were written to keep strong species from challenging weak ones. The weapons humans developed were created to defend themselves when other species attacked first. The cultural contamination was just humans sharing music, food, and stories with anyone who wanted to listen. Most serious of all, the Chancellor continued, is the charge of questioning Council authority. Humans have repeatedly challenged decisions made by this body. They have ignored trade restrictions. They have settled on worlds marked as forbiddance. They have acted as if the rules that govern this galaxy do not apply to them. That charge was completely true, and Jake felt proud of it. Humans had questioned Council authority because the Council was often wrong. They ignored trade restrictions, because those restrictions were designed to keep certain species rich while others stayed poor. They settled forbidden worlds because those worlds were only forbidden to keep them empty for species that would never use them anyway. The voting began. One by one, species announced their decision. The Aquilons voted first. The peaceful waters of our worlds have been disturbed by human aggression, their representative sang in a voice like whale song. We vote for banishment. The Zilithians came next. Their representative was a mountain of living rock that spoke in grinding sounds. Like avalanches, human traders have disrupted markets that maintain stability for 1,000 years. We vote for banishment. Species after species cast their votes against humanity. The Corridans were angry about losing 3 star systems to human colonies. The Ethereals claimed human technology was advancing too fast and threatened the balance of power. The Gardeners said human expansion destroyed the careful ecosystem they had spent centuries building. Some species abstained. The Builders said they had no opinion on biological species. The Observers claimed they only watched and never interfered. The Merchants said they would trade with anyone who had goods to sell. A few species voted in favor of humans. The Wolves spoke of respect for fellow hunters. The Wanderers understood the desire to explore new places. The Free Traders appreciated human business practices, but the votes against humanity kept coming. Jake stood straight and calm as the numbers climbed higher and higher. Inside his jacket pocket, a small device connected him to Earth through quantum communications that worked faster than light. Every few minutes he sent short updates back home. 200 against, he transmitted. 400 against. 600 against. President Lisa Carter sat in the Oval Office on Earth, receiving each message. Around her were the people who would need to act fast once the vote was finished. General Rick Hayes commanded all human military forces. Admiral Susan Blake controlled the space fleet. Dr. Kevin Walsh ran the science programs that had made human technology so advanced. Director Maria Santos managed all human colonies on other worlds. How long do we have if they vote for banishment? President Carter asked. Standard galactic law gives expelled species 6 months to leave Council space, answered Secretary of State Paul Johnson. But they might give us less time if they really want us gone. The final votes were cast. Chancellor. Vexstar's crystal body flashed with light as he announced the results. 731 species vote for banishment. 89 species abstain. 27 species vote against banishment. The motion carries. The species known as humans is hereby expelled from all Council space. They have 6 months to remove all presence from the territories governed by this body. Jake Morrison stood quietly for a moment, then activated his communicator one last time. His message to Earth was short and simple. Pack light? We're leaving. The chamber erupted in sounds from hundreds of different species. Some cheered. Some made noises that might have been relief. Others stayed silent. Jake turned and walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. As he reached the doors, Chancellor Vexstar called out to him. Ambassador Morrison, do you have anything to say before you leave? Jake stopped and turned back to face the chamber. He looked up at the floating platforms filled with species that had just voted to exile humanity from the galaxy. His voice was calm and clear when he spoke. Thank you, he said. The chamber fell completely silent. No one had expected that response. Thank you for making this decision for us, Jake continued. Humans have always done our best work when everyone else said we couldn't do something. You've just given us the biggest challenge we've ever faced. I think you're going to be surprised by what we do with it. He walked out of the chamber and let the massive doors close behind him. Behind those doors, delegates from 847 species sat in confused silence, wondering if they had just made a terrible mistake on Earth. President Carter ended the emergency meeting with orders that would change human civilization forever. Contact every human settlement in Council space. Begin immediate evacuation procedures. Activate Operation Exodus. It's time to go home and then find a new one. The evacuation of human space began exactly 12 hours after Jake Morrison sent his message to Earth. President Lisa Carter had signed the orders before most people even knew about the Council vote. Within days, massive cargo ships appeared. At every human settlement, trading post, mining station, and research facility scattered across 40,000 star systems. Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the largest evacuation vessel ever built by human hands. The ship, called New Horizons, was 5 miles long and carried enough cargo space to move an entire city. His crew worked around the clock, loading everything humans had built during their time in Council space. Nothing would be left behind except empty buildings and memories. On the farming world of New Kansas, Mary Thompson watched giant machines strip her fields bare in a single day. The wheat and corn that had taken months to grow disappeared into cargo containers, bound for ships waiting in orbit. Her husband Pete helped load their farming equipment onto transport vehicles that would carry it to the stars. 40 years we spent making the soil produce food, Mary said as she watched her life's work being packed away. Now we take it all with us to plant somewhere new. The machines did not just take the crops. They took the soil itself, scooping up tons of dirt that contained the bacteria and nutrients needed to grow food on other worlds. They took the seeds stored in underground vaults. They took the genetic samples of every plant and animal that humans had brought to New Kansas. When the evacuation was finished, the planet would be empty but not destroyed. Similar scenes played out on hundreds of human worlds. The mining colony on Asteroid Belt 7 dismantled their entire operation, down to the last bolt and rivet. The researchers on Ice Moon Station packed their laboratories into portable containers that could be reassembled anywhere. Even the artists on Culture World 4 carefully removed their sculptures and paintings to take with them to whatever new home awaited humanity. Dr. Kevin Walsh traveled from facility to facility, making sure nothing important was forgotten. His teams worked like armies of ants, taking apart research stations that had taken decades to build. Every computer was downloaded into portable storage units. Every experiment was preserved in stasis chambers. Every piece of equipment was carefully packed for transport. "Take everything that isn't welded down," he told his people. "And if it is welded down, bring the welding tools to cut it loose." The council had expected humans to beg for more time. They had expected panic and chaos as humanity tried to figure out where to go. Instead, they watched through their spy networks as humans moved with the precision of a military operation that had been planned for years. Because it had been planned for years, Admiral Susan Blake had been preparing for this possibility since the first time humans were accused of breaking council rules. Her scouts had been mapping star systems beyond council space for decades. Her engineers had been designing ships that could carry entire civilizations. Her strategists had been calculating how long it would take to move every human in the galaxy to a new location. "We always knew this day might come," she told her fleet commanders during a secure briefing. "The council has been getting more afraid of us every year. Fear makes people do stupid things like voting to banish the one species that was actually making their galaxy a better place." The evacuation ships carried more than just people and equipment. They carried the entire human economy. Factories were disassembled and packed into cargo holds. Banks transferred their assets into portable quantum storage devices. Trading companies liquidated everything they owned and converted it into raw materials that would be useful anywhere. The Zilithian trade networks reported strange activity as human merchants began selling everything they owned. But they were not selling for money. They were trading finished goods for metals, rare elements, and manufacturing equipment. Luxury items that had taken years to create were exchanged for basic materials that could be used to build new colonies. Captain Tony Lewis commanded a fleet of communication ships that stayed busy connecting all the scattered evacuation efforts. His quantum relay networks allowed instant communication across light years of space, keeping every human settlement in contact as they prepared to leave Council territory forever. "The Council thinks they're punishing us," he transmitted to Fleet Command. "They don't understand that humans have always been explorers. They just gave us a reason to explore places no one else has ever been." 3 months into the evacuation, something happened that surprised even the humans themselves. Other species began asking to leave with them. The Wanderer clans had always been friends to humanity, and they requested permission to join the exodus. Some free trader groups decided they would rather take their chances in unknown space than stay under Council control. President Carter approved these requests without hesitation. "Anyone who wants to come with us is welcome," she announced. "We're not running away from the Council. We're running towards something better." The Council surveillance networks reported increasingly disturbing intelligence as the evacuation continued. Humans were not just leaving. They were taking their entire industrial base with them. Orbital shipyards around Earth were being dismantled and loaded onto transport vessels. Mining operations were being moved intact to cargo ships. Even the space elevators that connected Earth to its orbital stations were being carefully taken apart and packed away. Chancellor Vextar called emergency sessions as reports flooded in from across Council space. "They are strip mining their own territories," reported Intelligence Chief Morden. "Every useful resource is being extracted and shipped out. They are leaving nothing behind except empty planets." The first major convoy disappeared beyond the galactic edge exactly 4 months after the banishment vote. Commander Nick Sullivan led the advanced scouts and ships, designed to find habitable worlds in regions the Council had never bothered to explore. Behind him came the first wave of colonists, carrying everything needed to build new civilizations from scratch. More convoys followed every few days. Each one carried thousands of ships loaded with people, equipment, and supplies. The streams of vessels heading toward the galactic rim looked like rivers of light flowing away from Council space toward the unknown darkness beyond, the last human. Evacuation ship left Council space on the final day of the 6-month deadline. Admiral Blake herself commanded the rear guard, making sure no human was left behind in territory they were no longer welcome to inhabit. As her ship crossed the boundary into unexplored space, she sent one final message back to the Council. "Thank you for setting us free." The first human ships entered the region known as the Dark Between Stars 6 months after leaving Council space. This was the area beyond the galactic rim where ancient light grew thin and stars were scattered like lonely islands in an ocean of emptiness. The Council had always considered this region worthless and dangerous, but humans saw something different when they looked into that darkness. Admiral Susan Blake established humanity's first command center on a rogue planet that drifted through space without orbiting any star. The planet had been thrown out of its original solar system millions of years ago and now wandered alone through the void. Most species would have seen it as a dead rock floating in eternal darkness, but human engineers saw potential. The planet still had a molten core that generated heat and magnetic fields. Geothermal energy could power entire cities if humans dug deep enough to reach it. The magnetic field would protect colonists from the radiation that filled the space between stars. Within weeks of landing, construction crews were drilling into the planet's crust to tap the power that lay beneath. They named the planet Hope Station, and it became the heart of human civilization in exile. Massive fusion reactors built on the surface provided additional power while underground cities grew larger every day. The planet's low gravity made it easy to launch ships to other worlds, turning Hope Station into a hub for human expansion throughout the Dark Between Stars. "The Council thinks they banished us to die in the cold and darkness," Admiral Blake told the fleet commanders during their first strategic meeting on Hope Station. "They don't understand that humans have always done our best work in places other species are afraid to go." Engineer Carlos Martinez led the terraforming teams that turned dead worlds into places humans could live. His crews used technology that pushed beyond anything the Council thought possible. Atmospheric processors originally designed for Mars were scaled up to work on entire planets. Solar collectors gathered energy from distant stars and focused it where it was needed most. The scattered star systems of the Dark Between became humanity's testing ground for ideas that would have been forbidden in Council space. On a planet orbiting a dying red star, scientists built research stations that studied physics in ways no Council species had ever attempted. The strange conditions near stellar remnants allowed experiments that revealed new laws of science. Dr. Rachel Kim commanded the Biological Research Division from laboratory ships that orbited neutron stars. The intense radiation and gravity near these collapsed stars created conditions that accelerated genetic research by decades. Her teams developed medical treatments that made humans more resistant to radiation, better able to survive in low gravity, and capable of living in environments that would kill most other species. "Exile is forcing us to evolve faster than we ever could have in the safe comfort of Council space," she recorded in her research logs. "Every challenge we face makes us stronger and more adaptable." The military changed too under the leadership of General Rick Hayes, no longer bound by Council weapon restrictions. His engineers developed defense systems that used the unique properties of dark matter and quantum fields. The ships that emerged from hidden construction yards looked nothing like the vessels that had left Council space. These new ships could bend light around themselves to become invisible. They could fold space to travel faster than anything in the Council fleet. Their weapons drew power directly from the quantum vacuum, giving them firepower that defied conventional physics. Most importantly, they were designed by humans who no longer had to worry about following rules made by species that feared human innovation. Captain Tony Lewis expanded the communication networks throughout the Dark Between using quantum relay stations that could transmit messages instantly across impossible distances. The harsh environment of interstellar space actually made these communications more secure than anything possible in normal space. Human settlements remained connected, despite being scattered across light years of emptiness on the tidally locked world of Haven. Governor Janet Miller established cities in the Twilight Zone between the side that always faced the sun and the side trapped in eternal night. The temperature gradient between hot and cold provided unlimited energy for the growing population. Humans learned to live in conditions that would challenge even the hardiest council species. The high-gravity world of endurance became a training center where human soldiers learned to fight in conditions that would crush most aliens. What started as necessity became advantage as humans developed strength and reflexes that surpassed their original capabilities. The soldiers who graduated from endurance could operate in environments that no council species could even survive. Food. Production evolved beyond anything humans had achieved in council space. The farming ships commanded by Director Lisa Garcia used zero-gravity growing techniques that produced more food per square meter than traditional agriculture. Genetic engineering created crops that could grow in the harsh radiation of interstellar space, providing fresh food for colonists on the most remote worlds. The children born in the dark between stars grew up different from their parents. They were stronger, smarter, and more adaptable. They played games that involved manipulating gravity and learned mathematics that described dimensions the Council could not comprehend. These children spoke languages that included quantum frequencies no other species could hear. Artist colonies established themselves on worlds where the strange physics created new forms of beauty. Painters worked with light that behaved in ways impossible in normal space. Musicians composed symphonies using the radiation songs of pulsars and black holes. Writers told stories of human achievement that would have been considered impossible fantasy in council territory. Trade networks developed between human settlements, using economics that operated on principles unknown to council species. Instead of competing for limited resources, humans learned to create abundance through technology and cooperation. Waste from one colony became raw materials for another, creating closed systems that generated more resources than they consumed. 2. Years after entering the dark between stars, humanity had not merely survived in their exile, but had begun to thrive in ways that would have been impossible under council oversight. The humans who emerged from this experience were no longer the same species that had been banished from civilized space. They had become something new, something adapted to thrive in the harshest environments the universe could provide. They had learned to find opportunity in isolation, strength in adversity, and unity in the face of a galaxy that had rejected them. The dark between stars had transformed from a prison into a forge, where humanity was remaking itself into something the Council had never imagined possible. The first sign that humans had returned came not through diplomatic channels or grand announcements, but through the quiet disruption of trade routes that had operated smoothly for thousands of years. Merchant ships reported strange sensor readings along hyperspace lanes that connected the major council worlds. Cargo vessels disappeared for hours at a time before reappearing with their crews confused and their manifest logs, showing impossible TIMESTAMPS. Captain Ben Parker commanded the scout ship Shadow's Edge as it moved like a ghost through council space, mapping defense networks and gathering intelligence on the civilizations that had voted to banish humanity 3 years earlier. His ship used cloaking technology that bent space and time around the vessel, making it invisible to sensors that had been designed to detect conventional spacecraft. The humans had returned, but not as refugees seeking readmission to the galactic community. They came as observers, analysts, and something far more dangerous to the established order. They came as competitors who no longer needed anyone's permission to exist on Zentara Prime. Chancellor Vextar convened emergency council sessions as disturbing reports accumulated from across council space. Trade disputes were erupting between member species as mysterious new suppliers appeared offering goods at prices that undercut established markets. The Corden Empire's weapon manufacturing collapsed overnight when superior technology appeared from unknown sources that made their products obsolete. Even the ancient Zilithian banking systems found themselves compromised by financial intrusions that left no electronic fingerprints but somehow transferred vast amounts of wealth to accounts that could not be traced. The hackers were so sophisticated that they seemed to understand Zilithian computer systems better than the Zilithians themselves. Dr. Linda Garcia coordinated humanity's return operation from the command center on Hope Station. Her teams had spent 3 years studying Council civilization from the outside, learning weaknesses and inefficiencies that were invisible to species who had grown comfortable with the status quo. The humans had not returned seeking revenge, but something much more effective than vengeance. They banished us for being too aggressive in trade and expansion, she explained to her strategic planning teams. Let's show them what we learned in the darkness about both subjects. Human merchant vessels began appearing at isolated trading posts throughout Council space, bearing no identification that connected them to Earth or any known human colony. These ships offered quantum computers that exceeded Council technology by several generations, medical treatments that cured diseases previously considered incurable, and energy systems that could power entire civilizations more efficiently than anything in the galactic marketplace. The Council's investigation teams, led by Security Chief Kadash, found themselves chasing phantoms whenever they tried to track down these mysterious traders. Human ships existed only when they chose to be detected, utilizing technology that manipulated the fundamental forces of reality itself. When Council patrol vessels attempted to intercept them, the human ships simply vanished into dimensions that Council science could not access when confronted directly. Human representatives spoke with quiet confidence that unsettled even veteran Council diplomats. Commander Steve Wilson faced down an entire Council fleet when his trading vessel was surrounded near the Aquaron system. His response to their demands for identification became legendary throughout Council space. We are not violating the terms of our banishment, he said calmly as dozens of Council warships targeted his single vessel. We are simply exercising our right to engage in free trade within regions not specifically restricted to human presence. Our legal department has reviewed all relevant statutes and found no violations of galactic law. The legal precision of his statement sent shockwaves through the Council's legislative chambers. Human lawyers had apparently spent their years in exile studying every law, treaty, and regulation that governed galactic commerce. They had found loopholes in the banishment order that allowed them to operate freely in most of Council space as long as they did not claim territory or establish permanent settlements. Within 6 months of humanity's return to the galactic stage, 3 Council species had quietly negotiated separate defense agreements with mysterious human military contractors. The Aquaron system faced renewed aggression from Corridon expansion forces and found salvation in the form of human peacekeeping vessels that resolved the conflict in mere days without firing a single shot. The human ships simply appeared in orbit around contested worlds and broadcast a simple message to all parties involved in the dispute. Any vessel that attacked civilian targets would be disabled and its crew placed in protective custody until the conflict was resolved through peaceful negotiation. The technology demonstration that followed convinced everyone present that resistance would be futile. Captain Amy Foster commanded one of the peacekeeping fleets that operated in the border regions where Council authority was weakest. Her ships prevented 3 wars, stopped countless piracy operations, and rescued millions of civilians from conflicts that the Council had been unable or unwilling to resolve. She never claimed credit for these actions, but grateful populations throughout the galaxy began to understand that humans were watching over them. The economic transformation was equally dramatic. Human corporations established by Dr. Mark Chun began offering employment to workers from Council species who were dissatisfied with their traditional economic systems. These jobs came with benefits that exceeded anything available through Council employers, including medical care that extended lifespans by decades and education opportunities that opened doors to careers that had never existed before. The vote that had banished humanity 3 years earlier began to look less like punishment and more like liberation from restrictions that had prevented humans from reaching their full potential. The species that had expected humanity to disappear into the cosmic wilderness found instead that they had freed their most dangerous competitors from all legal and moral obligations to play by council rules, trade relationships that had maintained stability for millennia collapsed as human alternatives proved superior in every measurable way. Military alliances crumbled when human protection proved more effective than council defense forces. Even cultural exchanges shifted toward human art, music, and literature that spoke to experiences and possibilities that council civilization had never imagined. The humans had not returned as the desperate exiles the council expected, but as something entirely new. They were a species that had evolved beyond the galaxy's ability to contain or control, and they were quietly reshaping galactic civilization according to principles that prioritized efficiency, innovation, and results over tradition, stability, and political compromise. The transformation of galactic civilization became undeniable when the Court and Empire, the most powerful military force in council space, officially requested human intervention in their civil war. The proud warrior species that had once voted for humanity's banishment now begged for help from the very people they had tried to exile from the galaxy. Ambassador Jake Morrison stood once again in the council chambers. But this time he was not a defendant facing judgment. He wore the simple blue uniform of humanity's diplomatic corps and carried the authority of a species that no longer needed the council's permission to exist. The platform where he stood was provided voluntarily by the council, not assigned by their rules. The terms for human assistance are straightforward, Morrison announced to the stunned assembly of galactic representatives. Humanity will maintain complete sovereignty over our territory in the dark. Between stars, council species are welcome to establish diplomatic and trade relations with us on equal terms. The old restrictions and regulations that limited human development are permanently void. President Lisa Carter's administration had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. She now governed not just planets or solar systems, but the space between galaxies themselves. The human economy operated on a scale that made council trade networks seem like local markets in comparison to interstellar commerce. Human territory now extended far beyond the dark between stars exploration fleets commanded by veterans like Captain Nick Sullivan had discovered inhabitable worlds in 3 nearby galaxies and established colonies that thrived in environments no council species could survive. The quantum communication networks that connected these distant settlements transmitted information faster than the council had ever imagined possible. General Rick Hayes presented the new military reality to the council's defense committee during a briefing that changed everything they thought they knew about galactic security. Human patrol fleets now protected shipping lanes that had been plagued by pirates for centuries. They eliminated criminal organizations that the council had been unable to stop and established security systems that surpassed anything the galactic government had achieved in thousands of years. We do not charge for these services, Hayes explained to the bewildered council representatives. Human protection of galactic commerce is funded by voluntary contributions from grateful civilizations and the wealth we confiscate from criminal enterprises that threaten peaceful trade. The protection was real and effective. Merchant vessels that had once required armed escorts to travel safely through dangerous sectors now moved freely under the invisible umbrella of human security. Pirates and raiders learned quickly that attacking ships under human protection meant facing retaliation that was swift, overwhelming, and inescapable. Dr. Kevin Walsh's research consortium had established universities throughout the dark between stars that attracted students from every corner of the galaxy. Council species found themselves sending their brightest minds to human institutions to learn technologies and scientific principles that their own civilizations could not develop. The knowledge gained in these schools transformed entire species and elevated their capabilities beyond what they had thought possible. The medical advances alone revolutionized galactic civilization. Human doctors had developed treatments that extended lifespans for all species, cured genetic diseases that had plagued civilizations for millennia, and enhanced mental capabilities in ways that opened entirely new fields of science and art. These treatments were provided freely to any species that requested them. With no political strings attached, Chancellor Vextar found himself in the impossible position of governing a council that had become dependent on the species they had voted to banish. The irony was not lost on anyone with the intelligence to understand it. In trying to remove humanity from galactic affairs, the Council had created a rival power that surpassed them in every meaningful measure of civilization. The economic transformation was complete. Human corporations now employed millions of workers from Council species, who had abandoned their traditional jobs for opportunities that offered better pay, superior working conditions, and career advancement possibilities that simply did not exist in Council-controlled industries. Entire sectors of the galactic economy had been revolutionized by human innovation. Human technology had become the new standard for everything from household appliances to interstellar transportation. The ships, computers, and manufacturing systems that emerged from human research facilities operated at efficiency levels that made Council equivalents seem primitive by comparison. Even the Council's own government offices had quietly switched to human equipment, because nothing else could handle the complexity of modern galactic administration. The cultural influence was equally profound. Human art, music, and literature had spread throughout Council space and beyond, inspiring creative works that explored themes and possibilities that had never been imagined before. The stories humans told about exploration, discovery, and the courage to face the unknown resonated with species who had forgotten what it meant to dream of something greater than maintaining the status quo. Most importantly, human educational systems had begun producing citizens of member species who thought differently about their place in the universe. These individuals questioned assumptions that had been accepted without debate for thousands of years. They demanded explanations for policies that served the interests of established elites rather than the common good. They pushed for changes that made their civilizations more efficient, more fair, and more capable of achieving their full potential. Chancellor Vextar requested a private meeting with Ambassador Morrison as his term of office neared its end. The crystal being who had once presided over humanity's banishment now faced the representative of the species that had become the galaxy's unofficial guardians. "We thought we were punishing your people when we voted for exile," Vextar admitted, his crystalline form dimmed with exhaustion and regret. "Instead, we freed you to become what you were always meant to be." Morrison nodded with the quiet dignity that had characterized human diplomacy throughout their return to galactic prominence. "The vote was unanimous among my people when we learned of the banishment. We were grateful for the opportunity to discover what we could accomplish when no one else was setting limits on our potential." As their meeting ended, reports arrived of humanity's latest achievement. Human scientists had successfully established faster-than-light communication links with distant galaxies, opening possibilities for expansion and exploration that dwarfed anything the Council had ever contemplated. The species that had been voted out of one galaxy had returned as the potential governors of many. The children who played in human settlements throughout the dark between stars learned lessons that would shape the future of galactic civilization. They learned that home was not a place others gave you, but something you built with your own hands and determination. They learned that exile was not punishment but opportunity. Most importantly, they learned that the only limits on human achievement were the ones humans accepted for themselves.